All right. Good evening, everyone. I just turned the lobby off so any new people rolling in can just come right on in. My name's Austin. I'm Chair of Outreach Committee. Welcome to the Gear Choices on the Great Divide Trail webinar this evening. This is our last pre-trail webinar for the year. We've had quite a few. They're all up on our YouTube page if you've missed them. Yep, thanks for joining tonight. And if you got a dip out or anything, just that's fine. It'll be up on YouTube tomorrow or maybe even this evening, depending on how fast I get it up there. So first, I want to acknowledge that the Great Divide Trail Association is committed to reconciliation, which starts by taking this and every opportunity to acknowledge our honor and privilege to live, work, and play within the Treaty 7 and 8 territory. We honor and acknowledge that the GDT passes through the traditional indigenous territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Stoney Nakoda, Tsuut'ina, Cree, Secwepemc, Late Litene, Ktunaxa, Snipes, and Métis nations. The Great Divide Trail Association would like to invite you to advocate for what you love and to preserve nature for future generations to enjoy while educating yourself and others on Indigenous history and perspectives. A bit of information about the GDTA if you aren't familiar already. We're completely volunteer-based. We're not for profit. We maintain hundreds of kilometers of trails every year, and we're the only group advocating on behalf of Canada's longest hiking trail. Everybody here is a volunteer except for one person. We have one employee that works way too hard. So if you're interested in helping out in any aspect, please reach out. We could use help pretty much everywhere. You know, that's the nature of volunteer organizations, whether you want to help out with social media, help write grants, if you want to help us with organizational structure, fundraising, there's a million opportunities, and everybody's welcome. Volunteering is the best way to help, also along with membership. Membership really helps right now, especially in our chats with different governing bodies, particularly Parks Canada, and different land managers such as Rec Sites and Trails BC. The more members we have, the more people that are supporting us, and we are representing by saying this is what people are looking for. Lastly, donating is great. Tons of our money comes from donations. All of it comes right back to the trail. And yeah, that's basically how we get done what we need to. There's some awesome membership benefits. All of these companies offer discounts for GDT members. If you're going for a hike this summer or even looking for upgrading some of your bigger items, the membership pays itself off immediately. For example, I bought a Durston tent this year, and with my membership, I saved $100. And membership is $40 to $100 depending on what package you're looking for. So, a great way to save a few bucks, support us and some local companies. To start this webinar off, I wanted to talk a little bit about climate in the Canadian Rockies. I think this is especially prevalent, you know, if you go on Reddit Ultralight and post like a gear list or something, all of it's very kind of US trail focused. People really try to get under that 10-pound mark or something, but our weather here is very different than a lot of the American trails and compared to a lot of places where people are hiking a lot. So to give you a bit of an idea, I just chose Banff for this information because it's kind of right in the middle of the GDT. So the average high in July for the city of Banff, which is at 1,400 meters or 4,600 feet, the average high is 23 degrees Celsius, which is 73 Fahrenheit. And average low is 7 Celsius or 42 Fahrenheit. Average is about 7 days of precipitation and 16 hours of daylight. So we have tons of daylight. You can really stretch out your hiking days on the GDT. I know when I started in 2021, I mean, in Waterton in late June, it was getting dark, but it was never like truly pitch black in the middle of the night. So you can really extend your days. You know, you can start hiking at 5 and it's fully light, and you can hike till 10 o'clock without using a headlamp. Um, One thing to know though is that looking at these temperatures, you know, certainly are hot days and we do get heat waves, but it does get cold. It's reliably cold. Any GDT through hike, I think you'd set some kind of world record if you didn't get rained on, and you will probably get snowed on. Especially the weather really seems to change once you're north of Jasper in sections F and G. It's a bit more temperate rainforest climate there, but it's still kind of a high enough latitude that it gets quite cold. So take that into consideration. You know, it's not necessarily like a little short rainstorm for 30 minutes, but you know, you might be in the rain for several days. And so this is kind of giving a bit of an information on kind of how some of these gear lists are picked to give you a bit of context. I think it's prudent to talk about the 10 essentials, which is navigation, headlamp, sun protection, first aid, a knife, fire, shelter, fire being like a lighter, shelter, food, water, clothes, and in the Canadian Rockies, I would say bug deterrent and some kind of way to secure your food securely, whether that's an Ursack or a bear can. Sections D require, as of last year, required secure food storage. So many sections now have an actual requirement to secure your food. And it's very important that you know how to use these things. It's pretty common to see people with a first aid kit that they bought and they have no idea how to use it. So, before you go out, make sure you know how to use all the things. Make sure you know how to set your tent up. Make sure you know how to tie an Ursack. Make sure you know how to use your first aid kit, and kind of all that jazz. It's kind of coming up next. We're going to chat with 3 different folks on kind of their gear list for the Canadian Rockies, what they love about it, some things they don't like, how they kind of feel about it. So we're going to start with Deanne. So Deanne's an outdoor educator who's taught in Alberta and the UAE. She's been leading backpacking trips with kids for nearly 20 years and has done tons of multi-day trips with friends and family. So Deanne, take it away.
Thanks, everybody. So currently I'm living in Vancouver, spent quite a bit of time growing up in the Kootenays and doing lots of backcountry trips in Kananaskis. So hopefully my insights here are useful to you too. So again, I've got a fairly basic tent. It's a 2-person tent, but it's also still on the lighter end of things. I've been transitioning over to like a lighter tent because I had a more durable tent and it was feeling a little heavier. So something on the lighter end did help with that too. I'm a big fan of the Big Agnes sleep system. I did a hike up Kilimanjaro a few years back, and I definitely loved having the insulated air core sleeping pad to be able to work with. It inflates, but it packs down to being smaller than an Nalgene bottle. So it's really great to be able to have that there. And it's nice having something insulated because then it provides that little barrier in between you and the ground for sure. And you don't have that cold air coming up and through. As for my sleeping bag, it fastens around my sleeping pad too, which is a nice added bonus, but it definitely keeps me warm. As for outerwear, I know I'm pretty hard on my gear. And sometimes, like, I know those bigger brands are really great to be able to invest in, and then you can get the repair systems or like repair patching within the organizations. Like, I know Patagonia, as an example, has a repair, but I'm just a fan of my mech jacket and my mech gear, Gore-Tex rain pants. Like, they have been pretty durable. And I, again, work often with kids. And so I am in and out with rocks and mud and everything. And they've been holding up too. So sometimes a little mech gear brand can help with that too. The big part I recommend with that is maintaining it. So cleaning it properly, using the proper sprays to allow for that waterproofing when you can. So then it provides that protection on the waterproofing barrier there. Yeah, the footwear, I know you might hear some different insights tonight, but I'm on Team Boot. And this is also because working on the education side of things, we often encourage kids to have like the ankle support and that sturdiness in the tread. And so I found these boots were on the like they're still heavier than most like trail shoes and such, but they're still pretty durable and they were able to support my feet. And I find Solomon shoes a little bit more comfortable, a little more wiggle room in the toes. So yeah, it worked well. As for pack, I have the Gregory Diva model. Again, they have a great like women's type fit. So it was really nice to be able to find something that kind of flexes as well with that and being able to have something that again fits more of a women's body shape. So nice to be able to look into that and it's really been comfortable. As for the cook system side of things, I am a fan of my folding dishes. So they're flat pack. They line right, great along the back of my backpack. But then they kind of pop up to be able to use. I know in colder weather, sometimes it takes a little bit to work with them, but they have a more up-to-date alternative, and they're available online too, where they have snaps to secure the corners, but then it's nice and flat packing, super easy to work with. I've had many people on trips recently where they've had their plastic sporks break. So if you're looking for utensils, try to consider something that's a little more durable, even with like the transitions from hot to cold and back to like again, like you're can be weakening that plastic. So maybe something that will be able to be more durable. So considering a metal utensil for that. And then I'm a big fan of a buff. The kids that I work with really bug me about it, but a buff I find is quite universal. You could have it as a neck warmer, you could turn it to a headband, you could turn it into a toque in along the way if you need to. You could use it as like a towel if you have to. So it's a pretty versatile piece of gear, and some of them are made of quick dry materials like, or even natural fibers, bamboo, merino, something along those lines. And I know, big fan of my foam sit pad. I've had one that was an old camping mat that I cut up into portions and was able to just roll it up nice and small in the side of my bag. And then you can use that to sit on, kneel on, and it provides that barrier so you're not sitting right on the ground.
Mhm. I forgot to ask you earlier, what do you use a stove? Do you always use a stove?
Yeah. So I have a few different systems. I know I've gone from old school using like my Whisper Light stove with the white gas fuel, and I've also gone more into like an MSR pocket rocket type. So nice, small, compact, using the little butane cans. So I've yeah done the range of everything, and I would say it depends on what your goal is. I know with the Whisper lights, like are using a white gas fuel, it's more sustainable. You can refill it. It's a little bit that way, but the stove system's bulky. While with a pocket rocket, you're carrying around those empty cans, but it's also quick, easy, lights fast, goes for a long time, and can be, yeah, really easy to work with.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah, if people have questions at all, feel free to toss them in the Q&A or the chat. We'll kind of get to them whenever. One thing I like about I used a buff on, or I had a buff on the GDT, and it's nice. Like when there's a ton of bugs, I can just like drench it in bug spray, and I don't have to put it on my face. But putting it on buff is way better. And then you can, I don't know, wash yourself off with it later. It's nice to have like a little sponge. Yeah. Alrighty. Did you have anything else to share, Deanne?
Um, Again, just test out your stuff, of course. Like try out some smaller trips, try out some longer like trips too. And I know you're all probably thinking that, like finding those opportunities to test it out. And yeah, just take care of your gear. That's my big thing is like look into the systems for maintenance, and like just keep up with repairs, or understanding how that all works is really beneficial to make your gear last longer. So, yeah, those are my recommendations.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, we're going to chat with Tyler. I met Tyler on both of our 2021 through hikes. Tyler's a very adventurous spirit at heart. He's always looking for the next challenge, whether it's exploring the backcountry, motorcycling, or really pushing his limits in endurance sports. He really thrives on community resilience and the pursuit of excellence in everything he does. He's a stand-up guy. I'm happy he's on the call tonight. So Tyler, you want to take it away and chat about your gear on the what's I feel like your through hike maybe really shaped your gear choices going forward.
Yeah, for sure. Excuse me. Hi, everybody. Yeah, they totally did. And I'll talk at the end of it, but it was something I picked up off you. I think we were just finishing section A, but anyway, so we'll talk about the big ones. So tent for me, I started out like so many people. First thing I did was dive into YouTube and started watching Jupiter Hikes and all the others and all these through hikers that have done the PCT and others. And what I had found is that so much of this stuff is very US focused, and the weather can be a lot more mild than it can be in the Canadian Rockies. But I started out with a Gossamer Gear tent, the Gossamer Gear, the one. It's a fantastic tent. It is a single wall tent, but I got caught in one of those 6 days of rain in July that was like absolutely torrential. And I swear, I had as much rain or moisture in my tent as there was outside. The condensation was incredible. So the minute I had the chance, I actually switched to a Big Agnes Tiger Wall UL2, and that tent was a lifesaver. It's still a very ultralight tent. It gave me a little bit more space as well because I'm not a small guy. Like I'm 6'4", 230 pounds. So it's nice to just have a little bit of room. And then obviously too, having that double wall was really great to mitigate condensation and all that. And even when the nights were really nice, I could just take the fly off and stuff, and it was nice and meshed. So really big fan of that tent. I wouldn't change anything. Looking back, however, I'm back in a single wall tent. It's a Dyneema tent from Z-Packs. And I really love it as well. So I'm not in the duplex. I'm actually in the offset duo, and that's my go-to tent as well. So love that. As far as my other, like my sleep system, I use the Thermarest Vesper -6 quilt, and it was actually my first experience with a quilt. And I have to say, I was really happy that I made that decision. When Austin and I did the Great Divide in 2021, we got stuck in the heat dome, and there was days where it was like 40 degrees Celsius. That's not a typical day in the Canadian Rockies, but being able to just like throw it open as well. And then when I got to section D, a couple days on section D, I woke up with frost in my tent. So just that, I find that -6 Celsius was a real sweet spot for me. And just to preface that, I do sleep, like I am a warm sleeper. So if you're colder, you may want to go to like a -12 or something. But yeah, so happy with that choice. And then I went with a Thermarest X-Lite, old school orange curry colored sleeping pad. I went with a long wide. The wide was just an absolute must. Even my wife, who's much smaller, she's like 130 pounds. She prefers a wide sleeping pad just to have a little bit more room. The 20s are for sure, they're lighter, but just that few extra inches was really nice. Mine was the crinkly one, but actually it got quieter as I went on. So it's almost like it had a break-in period. I have since now moved to the Neo Tensor all season, and that's a great pad as well. And then I never go anywhere without my pillow. I'm a firm believer that a good night's sleep is huge for recovery. And I just have a little Sea to Summit Aeros pillow. And so that's my go-to for the pillow. I love, 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 love having a pillow. For outerwear, I started out with the Outdoor Research Helium. I don't know if mine was bad or whatever. It wetted out on me right away. And when I finished section B, I swapped it out and I just took my Arc'teryx Beta SL, and it seemed to do a bit of a better job. But whatever works for you. Like Deanne was right on the money. The mech stuff too is fantastic, and you can get it on sale as well when they have a discount, sometimes up to 15% off. So yeah, whatever works for you for sure. So my daily wear was Sax trail running shorts. As a guy, I love the Sax stuff, just having that extra support. Their trail running shorts were phenomenal. Even if you see me in October out hiking, there's a really high chance I'm going to be wearing shorts. I'm just a shorts guy. I prefer shorts. North Face hoodie. Any sun hoodies really good. I would say if you're looking at shopping sun hoodies, anything with an SPF in it, like an SPF 50 or something. And then Darn Tough socks. I can't say enough about Darn Tough socks. They are in their name, darn tough. They work. They last forever. I think they've got this crazy warranty. If you get a hole in them, you send it back, they send you a new pair. So I really encourage Darn Tough socks because they aid in blisters and stuff like that too. I will say, so here's a little pro tip, is I stumbled on using deodorant on my heels and on my feet this year. You can get like the squirrel's nut butter and a bunch of other ones, but actually deodorant works really well. And I learned that from doing ultras and stuff. Obviously, it's one more thing you got to be mindful of. It's scented, so it has to be safely secured away and all that stuff. But that's just a little pro tip if you're having some issues. Footwear. I started out on the bandwagon with Ultra Lone Peaks, and it was an absolute disaster. I had one pair that only lasted me 90 kilometers, and they just completely came apart. The grips on them aren't very good. They're treacherous if you get on wet rock. They don't stick because they're not like a Vibram sole. And then I switched to the Ultra Olympus because I wanted a little more cushion, still staying with Ultra. And I didn't know a whole lot then about the footwear scene, but I wanted something with a little more cushion. So staying with the Ultra brand, I went to their max cushion shoe, which is Olympus, and then I finished it off with Sauconys. What I will say though is since then, I have all my hiking and everything, I go to a Brooks Cascadia. And it is an amazing shoe. It's got a bit of a wider toe box in it, and it's got a rock plate in the bottom of it too. The Canadian Rockies are very rocky, so just having that little bit of protection in there is awesome. Plus, it's got this little Velcro piece for like a little run gaiter. But these shoes, I was saying before we jumped on here, I get bored of them before they wear out. So if you're kind of on the fence or not sure which shoes, I'm not sponsored by them by any means, but I would go look and check out Brooks Cascadians. I think they're fantastic. My pack was Hyperlite Mountain Gear Southwest 3400, which is the 55 liter. I wouldn't change a thing. It's still my pack today. Actually, I've updated it to the Unbound 55, which is just the new version. Incredible pack. It's a roll top pack, Dyneema. It never got wet. It carried exceptionally well. Love, love, love the pack. The only thing it doesn't have is load lifters, so that might be important to some people. It's more of like a barrel bag with a couple of aluminum stays for support. Some people prefer like the Osprey packs that are a lot more, structurally sound, if you will. They're also heavier. They do have a nice waist belt, and they're very, very full of features. For me, that wasn't important. I just wanted something that was quite light, like even a 55 liter in a tall was just 2 pounds. So really nice light pack. Love it. Pole, you can go with any type of poles. It doesn't matter. Costco, I think, has their poles on. You can get them super cheap, and they're carbon fiber poles. I think the brand is Cascade, and they're great poles. But I just chose Black Diamond, the carbon corks. I love having the feel of natural carbon in my hands. Especially when you're sweating and all that too. But yeah, and my cook system. So I did a combination of cold soaking, and I did a combination of, cold soaking and heating my food. I used a Jetboil for a section, and then I swapped it out and I started using a MSR Pocket Rocket Deluxe with a Sea to Summit collapsible kettle. And actually, that's kind of my go-to now. I love the collapsible kettle because it collapses about that big. It's super flat, stuffs anywhere in the pack. And so love that system. I always cold soak my breakfast, and I always cold soak my lunch. And I just used a little gelato container. And that seemed to work really well. And I just stuffed it in the shovel pocket of the outside of my pack. And by 10 o'clock, I would have my breakfast. I kind of had this little mantra that I had to do 10 kilometers before 10 a.m. and then I'd stop and have my snack, but that was just my thing. Dislikes for me, Ultra Lone Peak, the Outdoor Research Helium did not work for me. The one tip that I will say, which I actually got from Austin, was we were finishing up Section A, and Austin had I think it was a KuloClean bidet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those that are here that don't know what a KuloClean bidet is, it's like this little, I was going to grab it. It's like this little black bidet, this little black thing that you stick in the end of your water bottle. And I'll tell you one thing, it's kind of weird at first because in North America, we're not used to bidets so much, and we're not used to, cleaning ourselves with our hand. But I'll tell you, there's nothing worse than being halfway through a section wondering if you're going to have enough toilet paper to make it to the end of the section. And so that was so nice to have the bidet. After section B, I didn't even carry toilet paper for the rest of my Great Divide hike. I just used the bidet, and it was amazing. Keeps you way cleaner than toilet paper and stuff. And now people are carrying wipes and all that. And I don't want to contribute to the landfill. So bidet for me was awesome. And I would highly encourage anyone to just like take the plunge and do it. You will not regret it. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, the bidet was a game changer for me. You just feel so much cleaner at the end of the day, like just sweaty and salty.
Well,
You just
the salt too, right?
Yeah.
That was the big thing for me. And I'll just maybe a little TMI, but it's hot, you get sweaty and you start to get chafing. And I'll tell you, the bidet takes all that away. It's wonderful. No more chafe or anything. Was awesome.
Yeah, not packing out toilet paper is nice too.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Tarnast first GDT tent for 2 6'4" hikers. Tyler, do you have any? I'm only 6 feet tall. My partner is like 5'8", 5'9". Do you have any? Tent for two of you?
One tent for 2 GDT 6'4"?
Yeah.
So kind of need to know what the budget is, right? Because you can spend a ton. I think bang for the buck, 6'4", still can't go wrong with the Durston tent. I think for the money, for the quality, and I don't even own a Durston tent. I know how good they are. I've slept in them. I've had lots of room. So yeah, Durston XMed 2 is awesome. If you're feeling like spending lots of money, the Z-Packs Offset Trio. Z-Packs has done a great job. They're quite generous in their tent length. Also too, Big Agnes also makes an XL now, which I think is a little bit longer, and also it accommodates regular wide pads, so that's not the tent's not tapered anymore. So you do have lots of options for 2025. A lot of the tent manufacturers have said, hey, you know what, we need to make these a little bigger to accommodate. So you have more options now.
Also, I'll say a couple of years ago, I splurged and got a Hyperlite Ultimate 2 with the full inner.
Yeah,
it's palatial. Like
yeah.
it's massive. It's so comfortable. It's built so nice.
Yeah.
Like it weighs, I think, just under 3 pounds, but like if there wasn't a pole in the middle, you could easily sleep 3 people. So I mean, 2 people that aren't friends can still sleep in there and still still not fight. The pack size is pretty substantial. It's basically packing like 2 duplexes. So kind of like, Durston XMed 2 or duplex packs about this. It's 2 of these, because one for the fly and then one for the floor with the bug net. Doesn't weigh a ton, but it's super comfortable. Yeah. Alrighty. Oh, and I forgot to ask, Tyler, you used an Ursack, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's I use an Ursack in the summer, and sometimes I'll bring my bear canister in the winter, because I do winter backpacking and winter camping as well. Nice thing about the Ursack or the canister in the winter is it's a seat as well, which is great.
Somebody said Tarp tent has a 3-person trekking pole tent. Oh, I didn't know that. Stratospire 2 on the East Coast Trail. Yeah, I think the Stratospire, I think, was also a bit of a influence on the Durston tents. Roger asks, can I get away with frog togs before Jasper? I heard there's minimal bushwhacking and lets me save a full pound from a full torrent shell set. It really depends on the weather you get. I think frog togs north of Jasper, you're going to shred them in a day. Like my hiking pants, I had nice like Arc'teryx pants, and I ripped them to pieces in F&G, and they were like pretty new going in. But yeah, I saw a couple people with frog togs. If they got a full day of rain, they got wet and they hated themselves. But yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, there are some sections, like if you look at like the height of the Rockies, that can be kind of brushy as well. Not quite bushwhacking, but definitely if you could easily snag something on branches and overgrowth there. Just trying to think where else. Some of the first parts of Section E, as you get into like up Owens Creek and through there, that can be pretty brushy as well. So
Yeah, I know. So Jupiter, really popular ultralight YouTuber and Instagrammer. This was the first trail where he actually got like a full 3-layer rain jacket. And I mean, he's sometimes 7, 8 pound base weight kind of thing. And he was very happy. He had like a 3-layer rain jacket, like a nice rain jacket the whole way through. Um, I I would say like if you are trying to say what like to me a rain jacket on the GDT is just such a like a good rain jacket is just such a non-negotiable. Pants, maybe you could start with some cheap rain pants to start and then go nice rain pants for the end. That's that's what I would do anyway. If you really are looking to.
and there's also a lot of places too where you'll get the car wash in the morning, right? Like where you'll
Yeah.
get the dew on the leaves, and like you'll want a kind of a nice little kind of rain jacket or waterproof layer to put on just until the dew burns off, because you can get absolutely soaked,
Mhm.
pretty quick just with the car wash effect.
Yeah, and that's in a lot of sections. Even if you're not like really bushwhacking, just leaves, you can get really cold and wet in a hurry. All right, Kelly. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put your intro in here, but Kelly's been with the GDT for quite a few years. He's on the IT committee. He's helped out with trail protection and advocacy. He's helped us out with multiple gear webinars in the past. He's really knowledgeable on like InReach, Solio, that kind of deal, as long as a bunch of other things too. But yeah, Kelly, thanks for jumping back. And you want to chat about gear you've used on the GDT and what works?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like this is kind of my list that I've iterated over the past few years. So I backpack almost exclusively in the Canadian Rockies and have been doing so for 35 years. So it's definitely evolved quite a bit over time from the old mech dome tents and whisper lights to what I carry today. That's quite a bit lighter and just as functional, if not more so, in a lot of different ways. So I'll start off with kind of going through the list. You mentioned, so I've got a Durston, I guess kind of filtering up, XMID Pro 1P. I really love this tent. I started with the regular XMID 1P. Really enjoyed that, and then when the opportunity came out to get the Dyneema version, I went ahead with that. It is a single wall tent, so you do want to bring a sort of a chamois or kind of cloth to kind of wipe things down in the morning so it doesn't get too damp. But because it is Dyneema, it doesn't absorb water. Everything just wipes off, dries super fast, so you don't have to worry about if you get 6 7 days of rain, it's just not going to get heavier and heavier and heavier with all the rain. And yeah, it's worked really really well in a lot of different places up and down the trail. One thing I would, for some of this, folks that are asking about like, is this tent going to fit us? Is it a good size? One thing that I did a couple of years ago when I was like researching different tents is, if you go to the website and you get the specifications, go down in your basement or garage or wherever you got kind of a flat floor, take out some masking tape and just like tape out the perimeter of the tent, like measure it out and say, okay, it's 48 inches long and 24 inches wide. Tape it out, and then you can actually lie down, put your mat down on the floor, and say, okay, how does this work? How does this feel for size? And that's a good way to get a little bit over that anxiety of like, am I going to fit? Is it going to work? And help you avoid spending money that you don't need to on a tent that may be too big or too small for you. For a sleep system, I use a Neo Air X Lite NXT, so that's kind of the latest and kind of the newest version of the inflatable. This one is, apparently they've solved the crinkle issue. I haven't really noticed any issues with the noise. I had a previous Neo Air X Lite that I never really had the crinkle issue. Maybe I was just lucky with the person that was assembling it on the production line that day, but it never made a lot of noise. One thing I do like, because I sleep with a quilt, is I actually got a sheet like you can from Neoair, you can actually get a little sheet that basically goes onto the sleeping pad, and it just makes a world of difference when you're sleeping and you wake up in the morning. You're not kind of suction cupping yourself off the plastic on the sleeping pad. So it's a nice little thing. And then after you get back from your trip, you can throw it in the wash and clean the sheet, and it keeps the gear a little bit cleaner. And it hardly weighs anything as well. Yeah, the quilt I use is actually, so it's a quilt that I had made here at a local company here in Calgary. They based it off the Katabatic Palisade quilt, and I love it. It's nice. I'm a warm sleeper as well, so it's great on a warm day. You can kind of stick your feet out. It's got a toe box, so it's not a pure square quilt. But yeah, you can flip out of it if you want when it's hot. When it's cold, you can put your feet in the toe box, snuggle up, and keeps you nice and warm. And I used to use the Eureka Wicked Stick pillow, but just this year I also switched to the Eros Sea to Summit pillow that Tyler uses. So I can't echo that statement enough. It's a luxury, but if you're not sleeping well, your trip's not going to be much fun. So it's one of those things that it doesn't weigh too much, but a nice inflatable pillow helps you get a good night rest. I've tried the whole bring a bag and stuff sack and stuff your clothes and stuff your your puffy and all that stuff to kind of make a pillow. The only downside is if you have a really cold night and it's like, well, actually I need my puffy, I need to wear my puffy because it's chilly, and then you don't have a pillow and you're not sleeping that well. So definitely bring a pillow along. It'll save your trip. Outerwear for rain jacket, I have just an Mech JKL. I've had it actually for a couple years. Like Dan said, just keep good to take care of it. I reapply the DWR every year on it, so it stays and keeps its water resistance, keeps you dry, and it's fairly lightweight, and it's kind of rugged enough that you can get through some of the brushier areas without worrying about shredding your waterproof layer. And then just for my puffy and kind of warmth layer, I've got a Patagonia Alplate down. I like it compresses down to almost nothing, and then when you're cold and need to bring it out, it's nice and toasty. So it's great for those chilly nights or chilly mornings where you want to keep warm. And then if you're in your sleeping bag or your quilt at night, and it's a really chilly night, you can pull it on as well as an extra layer and keep you warm. For daily wear, I use it's the Wind River No Fly shirt and pants. So this is something I think that you can get through Marks. I know in Canada there's a lot of limitations on getting clothes with permethrin in them, so you can't actually go out and just buy permethrin like you can in the US and treat your clothing. So there, once these came out and said, hey, this is a great opportunity to get the permethrin infused clothing, which really helps with the bugs, because the mosquitoes can be horrific on the trail. It's kind of a roll of the dice. Some summers are like, you don't know what happened because there's hardly any bugs out there. But then there are other summers where you're just going to get devoured by mosquitoes. So it's nice that the permethrin keeps them off, and they can't kind of bite through it either. So nice combination. One thing I didn't put down here is kind of as part of my footwear system or socks. So I also use the Darn Toughs as my main sock, but I also use a liner sock. I use the thin Injinji merino toe socks, and I find those fantastic. I noticed I used to always get blisters kind of between my toes. So your feet get sweaty, they start rubbing on one another, and so I get blisters between my toes. Once I switched to the toe socks, it's a little bit weird at first because your toes are all being separated by the wool, but since then I've never had any issues with blisters. So it's a nice combination that I've used for the past couple of years. For footwear, I've tried lots of different shoes over the years. I always keep coming back to the Morels. They just seem to fit my feet nicely, and I use the Moab Vents right now. But yeah, they're they're my daily shoe that I wear around just around town, and they also, I usually get a fresh pair when I go on a nice long hike, and they last me a good year or two, and comfortable for me. So once you find a shoe that works for you, stick with it and hope that they don't change it, because I know the shoe manufacturers like to reinvent things every couple of years, and sometimes not for the better. For my pack, I use a Durston Aqua 40. So this, when I first made the switch to a 40-liter pack, it was definitely a bit of a learning curve. I used to backpack when my kids were a lot younger. I ended up carrying a lot of their gear. So I had like a Gregory 80-liter. So it was a giant pack. And I kind of came from that to a 40-liter. And there was almost this whole, okay, like, how can I fit all my stuff in here? And it was actually a good, almost enforce some discipline to say, hey, do I really need this stuff? Do I really need to bring that? And really allowed me to really narrow down my gear to just what I need. And that also helped lighten the load quite a bit. So after you go on a couple trips and you realized I did not use this widget once over the past 3 trips, and you're starting to wonder why you're carrying it around, it helps to just kind of optimize when you have less space to fill. And then you also learn, because it is a barrel sack type pack, what goes in first comes out last. So you learn a little bit more strategically on how you pack up in the morning so that you can access what it is that you need. But I love the pack. It carries well. It's got enough features with that you can carry your water bottle on your on kind of one of your pack straps, and then I carry my bear spray on the other side, so both are well within reach. And then you've got your hip pocket, so you can carry all the snacks that you need. So it's definitely the pack that I use, and I've been using it for the past couple of years. So just I just saw a question: do I need to carry food bag container outside the pack? Usually, it kind of depends. When I'm leaving on say a 6-7 day trip, I've got some stuff that's outside the pack. Usually my Ursack will be in the big back stretchy pocket on my Durston pack. But I generally find I can get everything I need for a 6-7 day trip into the 40-liter pack. It is it is bursting at the seams, but then as you start to work through your food, it gets a lot better throughout the couple of days. Poles, I also use the Black Diamond carbon cork. I like Tyler. I like the feel of the cork on my hands just when you're sweaty, and they're nice, good, strong poles. So when you're having to put your weight on it and use it to help navigate a creek and you're rock hopping across, I like having that kind of reliability and know that it's not gonna slip, it's not gonna break, it's gonna keep you nice and stable as you go. Cook system, I actually use the Jetboil Stash. That's my kind of go-to cook stove. I did some comparison a while back for like between the BRS, because you can get the BRS like ultralight and use like a Toaks titanium pot on top of it. And I found that like as you start getting into like the 5-6 day trips, the efficiency of the Jetboil with its heat exchanger, and I know the Pocket Rocket, they make a kind of a heat exchanger version as well. That's where you start getting that kind of conversion factor, and that, yep, the BRS is a lighter stove and pot, but it's not quite as fuel efficient. It actually uses about twice as much fuel as the Jetboil. So that pretty soon you get to that point of, hey, if I can bring the lighter stove, but then I need 2 fuel canisters, and then the weight savings is lost. So that's kind of, I like the stash, and you can carry your fuel canister in it, so it's pretty efficient from a space perspective.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
One of the things that my little other luxury that I always like to bring along is a Thermacell, and this is also just again for the bug. So if you haven't seen one of these, it's the Thermacell backpacker, and basically it goes onto your fuel canister just as you would your stove, and it has these little wafers that you kind of slide in. It uses a catalytic heater, heats them up, and basically creates a little zone where the mosquitoes and bugs stay away. And it is if you're just sitting at at one of the campsites where there might be a picnic table and you want to sit down and chat with a few of your other campers, if the bugs are really bad, you pop this up and you have a little force field around you that keeps the bugs away, and you don't have to go run and hide in your tent to stay away from the bugs. So it's nice to get that respite along the trail. Just because, like I said, the bugs can be pretty bad.
You know, it's funny, Kelly, at first I thought that was a gimmick until I bought one and I used it. It really worked well.
Yeah. Well, it was funny when I was like looking at buying mine. I think I got mine at Canadian Tire or something like that. And the guy said, "Well, that's the only one that people actually come back and buy the refills."
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Well, that's a good sign. I mean, if people are coming back to buy the refills, then it must be working." So yeah, it works really well, and I always bring it along with me, particularly in the summer or spring when the bugs can be pretty bad.
How much fuel does it use?
It doesn't use much. Like it just uses like it's a catalytic heater, so it maybe goes through like a few grams of fuel for every 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It doesn't use very much at all.
It's really, yeah, they're really great.
Oh, cool.
I guess other things I'd probably recommend, just when you're on the GDT. So one thing I like to bring is it's like a little collapsible like water bladder, because there are some places on the trail where the water carries can be a little bit long. So most of the time, yeah, I've got my liter and a half smart water bottle that I'm filtering whenever I go past a creek, so I'm not carrying a ton of extra water weight. But there are some places where it's like, what, it's 10K to the next water source. So I've got that little kind of, collapsible water bladder that I can, up to 2 liters, I can fill that up and just kind of strap it to the top of my pack. So if I need that extra water, I've got it. And it's nice for like kind of a kitchen bag. So you get to camp, you fill up you filter all your water, fill it up, and then you're good for dinner, you're good for breakfast, good to refill all your water bottles for the next morning. So you're not having to spend time filtering again before you hit the trail. So I think it's pretty handy.
Kelly, what fabric did you get on your Kakwa? Roger was wondering if you got Ultra or the 200.
So this is one of the original ones that came out. So I think it's the Ultra. It's not the newest version.
Awesome. Did you have anything to add?
No, I think that's. I think the other thing that I don't know if folks have mentioned, but obviously the GDT is in bear country, so make sure that you do bring bear spray with you. Make sure it's easy accessible. Like I said, on my Durston, it's nice because it's actually in one of the shoulder straps that I can carry it right there and then. But always make sure you've got it clear and close. I'll also sometimes carry like if I'm going where I know that there's a lot of bear activity, I'll bring an air horn as well. Just one of those little it's like for boats and stuff. It's a little tiny compressed air canister with a horn on the top. So you've got that as an additional noisemaker if you need it as well.
And just to add, Kelly, make sure that you're checking the dates, the expiration dates on the bottom of them too. And the other thing is to know how to use it. Like I've actually, with my kids, I take an expired one, I go somewhere safe and I show them how to use it. I've been in the mountains lots and I see people out hiking with that little safety zip tie still on it that comes from the manufacturer that they haven't snipped off. So if they did get a run in with a bear, they wouldn't even be able to pull that off. So really, really, really important to actually know how to use bear spray.
And then like on that light, I mean, some manufacturers you can actually buy inert canister. So it's basically the same thing as the bear spray with the exception that they don't have the active ingredient in it. So you can use it, you can fire them off and kind of practice to see what's the range like. And the idea with like a bear spray, it's not like, hey, I'm gonna like spray it and aim it right into the bear's face. It's more like I'm gonna lay down kind of a cloud of capsicum that the bear's gonna have to come through in order to get to me. So it's, I'd also look at like, depending on where you are, there are often, either organizations that'll do like bear safety demos. So you can kind of sometimes see, try it yourself and practice. And I think like this is something most folks have said, with their gear, like know how to use your gear. The GDT is a little bit different from some of the other like long trails in the US that, if you start and it's like, oh, okay, no worries, in 3 or 4 days I'm going to hit another town or city. I can always easily swap out my gear. There's going to be some fairly well supplied gear stores along the way that you can kind of, adjust and um, adjust your gear along the trip. GDT, it's a bit harder to do that, right? Like there's not a lot of stores unless you're getting off trail quite a bit. If you realize that, what, actually, this is the wrong tent, or this is this sleeping bag just isn't working for me. So do some good shakedown hikes, just to make sure that you've worked out your gear, you've kind of dialed it in, you understand how everything works, because you won't really have a lot of opportunities to roll into a mech, for example, and replan what your gear is and what you're going to use going forward.
Mhm.
Could I tag a thought about the bear spray side of things? Yeah, I was just going to mention Canadian Tire does sell an inert can and like a bear spray can together. And I think Mech also sells that too. So if you want to get the practice tester for yourself, it's a great little tool. I've used them a lot with my classes that I would teach.
So it's a combo of like one fake one and one real one.
Yeah, so the fake, or I guess the inert one or fake
Yeah.
one would be the white. It's like a white with blue. And then you'd have the yellow with red or orange is the bear spray canister.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I know the first time I sprayed bear spray, I just had an expired one, and I live pretty rurally, so it's pretty easy to go down just a dirt road for a while. And I was surprised it kind of has a little punch to it when you spray it. It was a little, it's not as wimpy as I expected, but yeah, really, it comes out of there.
Yeah. And then I also use the Ursac with an OPSAC for whenever I go places where there's no bear lockers or hangs.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, I hiked the GDT in 2021. Since then, I've done OSAT Communicator. I'll jump on this right after I go through my list because I feel like we all either have used one or have perspectives on them in either way. You know what? Might as well do it now. I used an InReach Mini to, not the two, just an InReach Mini. Totally fine. I think if I didn't have anything, I would probably buy a Zoleo. The screen on the InReach Mini 2 is completely worthless. Like it doesn't do anything. Like you're not navigating with it. I found the navigation that you do get through Garmin is pretty trash compared to like Fat Maps, Far Out for this trail, or Gaia. Those are just way better. So I'm just using it to communicate. And with the Zoleo, if somebody I found on the GDT hike, it's nice just to have a point person to be like, okay, I'm going to message you. You kind of teach them about how to respond. Don't send 15 messages all with one word like we do with text sometimes. With the Zoleo, if the receiving person has the app, you have like 900 characters instead of like 130 or something. Don't remember the specifics. Kelly probably knows. But
Yeah.
just being able to send way more content in a message is nice.
Yeah, yeah. I use the Garmin 66i, so it's more the full-fledged GPS. It's kind of more of a belt and suspenders, just because I've got my phone, which I use Gaia and Far Out on, but then I've also got the backup as my GPS unit. But similar to Austin, if I were to be buying a brand new SAT communicator these days, I'd probably go with the Zoleo. It's light, it's easy to use. The app is pretty well built, and I've heard good things about it.
Also, if you're in the market, you get there's like a $25 fee for activating a Zoleo, and GDT members get it for free if you are thinking about getting one. Deanna or Tyler, did you bring a InReach or any kind of GPS communicator?
Yeah, so I used same, the Garmin InReach Mini 2 wasn't out yet. I had the Garmin InReach. I had the same comments as you do about the Garmin InReach. Nice thing about it is that it is so small. And what else? I mapped out my entire GDT on Gaia, which was really great, so I could actually see it. And yeah, I think that was it. And then Gut Hook, Far Out. It was Gut Hook then. far out. So that's kind of the system. I know Apple now has satellite. I would really encourage people to not rely on that as their satellite communicator, because it's still hit or miss. You gotta have a really clear signal. And if something does happen, let's just say absolute worst case scenario, you get knocked over by a bear and your phone is 20 yards from you, blah, blah, blah. I really wouldn't use it. I am also, if my Garmin died tomorrow, I too would go Zoleo for sure. So
See, I've had hit or miss luck with Zoleo, so maybe it's just where I'm at, doing more hikes here in the Lower Mainland, more recently. But I've had quite a lot of success with my Spot, and I know it might be a little old school, but it's the one that kind of looks like a BlackBerry, and it's been pretty good for me. And I've been able to have messages received and be able to send them really quickly. But yeah, I've had some bad luck with Zoleo, but it's great to hear others are having some good luck with it too.
What specifically wasn't optimal about the Zoleo?
Well, I've just had issues with receiving messages sometimes. So it could be like a really extended period of time until I would have a message that would come through. Sometimes my messages wouldn't send. And so, yeah, maybe it was just the subscription plan that I had, or just the area that I have been spending more time in here. Maybe it's better service for the Rockies as well. So it sounds like that's been working well for people. So I'm happy to hear it works in better parts of, or other parts of the country here.
The other thing I would just add to what Tyler was saying is with the with the SOS on things like the iPhone, I think the other big difference is folks or like companies like Garmin and Zoleo. Like Garmin actually owns these days that they call it the International Emergency Response Coordination Center. So it's the place where when you hit the red button, that the message goes, and then they try to coordinate. Okay, who do we need to call out based on where you're at? And if you look at kind of the maps and what search and rescue teams serve different departments, it can get very, very complicated. Like I know there are sections on the GDT that if you go like 1 kilometer to the north, you're in Parks Canada. So Parks Canada has their own search and rescue. You go 1 kilometer to the south and you're in Kananaska's public safety zone, so they've got search and rescue. You go 1 kilometer to the west, you're now in BC. And I mean, all of those search and rescue departments coordinate with each other, but it can be a real challenge to say, okay, who is the right people that need to get the message if there is an emergency? And that's where like the IERCC, they've been doing it for probably a good 20 or 30 years, and there's just a lot of experience and expertise and knowledge and how they coordinate things when if something does go sideways. Maybe give it a couple years and Apple will have built up kind of that same capability and experience. But it's one of those things like you almost have to, you learn by doing, and you get good at how do you, like I said, get the right people to the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I didn't know that somebody commented that the Apple SOS feature won't work if you have set service, like even like one bar that doesn't really do anything. Interesting. Yeah, I have heard of people hitting the button throughout the Rockies, and the response time I thought was impressive. I mean, it's not 2 hours, but sometimes it's like same day, which is pretty impressive for how remote some of it is, or even the next day. So it's nice to have, especially for weather too. I found that was the nicest thing about having my inReach is, on this hike, I just went with the unlimited plan. The plans have been a little reworked now since I did it, but just kind of knowing, you wake up, it's pouring rain. Is it worth getting out of my tent right now and being in the rain? Or should I wait 30 minutes, an hour, and take my chances and maybe not get, absolutely drenched for the first hour of hiking? Or also, kind of pulling in to Jasper. When we first got to Jasper, it was supposed to like rain or snow for 3 or 4 days. And at that point, reservations are really flexible. So we just kind of stayed in Jasper for a couple of days and avoided getting, rain and snowed on for 3 or 4 days, which would have made it pretty miserable starting off with a 10-day food carry.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I hiked in 2021. I hiked with my partners. We shared basically anything that could be shared, we did share. Starting off with our tent, we started with a duplex. We had used it on kind of some shorter hikes, mostly fair weather before. Like if it looked like it was going to rain for our whole trip, we would just cancel. But with a through hike, that's not usually the case. I hated the duplex on the GDT. I found this was before the fly could zip, and I just found, with that little toggle button and the thing at the bottom, there was still like a little sliver where the two flies connected. And when it's torrentially downpouring in a thunderstorm, which happened every single night on section B, it was like no matter there was no, ideal campsite. I mean, we were in the trees, but the rain was hammering so hard that we were getting so much mud splashed back into the tent that we were holding our rain jackets up against the bug net. And it's just now everything's covered in mud. It was like, every tent is awesome when the weather's awesome. And I heard Dan Durston say that on a podcast. And he said, you can really tell if a tent's well suited for where you are based on how it deals with the worst conditions. And I mean, like on the PCT, a duplex would probably be awesome, or Arizona Trail, but somewhere where, lots of thunderstorms in the Rockies in June and July, you get really intense hard rain. I wanted something a little more secure. I hated it so much that we had a Hubba Hubba at home. We had trekking poles, but that's a really secure, it's a really well-made tent, really secure, definitely on the heavier side for a lot of thru hikers, but in it was really nice. And then I was fortunate enough, Dan Durston let me borrow an XMID Pro 2 for the rest of the trail. And that tent was awesome. I had to give it back, which was kind of a bummer, but I actually just bought one earlier this year. And I think that's, with the exception of an Ultimate 2, that's probably my favorite tent I've used. The size is quite cumbersome, and it weighs a little bit more, but that tent is just huge. XMID Pro 2, I think, is my favorite tent for, a lightweight, like kind of through hiker style tent. My partner, she has a 10-degree Enlightened Equipment quilt. So like she has a huge poofy toe box. So she would always put her feet at the side that's more steep or like up and down. And then she would have a little less headroom. And then I am taller. So then I put my head on the side with more headroom. It worked great. You can pitch that thing all the way to the ground. It's very storm worthy, I think, for a single wall tent. For sleep system, I have one of the original Thermarest X-Lights. I got it the year it came out. It's still alive and kicking, no problems yet. My partner recently got the Nemo Tensor All Season. I think it's definitely nicer, less crinkly. It's even thicker, good pad feel. She used a Sea to Summit Etherlight XT large wide. It's a huge pad. It's super comfortable. Also a good pad for the GDT. For my quilt, I used a Katabatic Flex 22. Read a lot of hype about it. I think her Enlightened Equipment pad is nicer. Mine kind of has more of a traditional nylon-y feel, but then those Enlightened Equipment quilts have just such a nice, smooth kind of nylon on the outside. She got the 10-degree. 22 I felt was like right on the cusp. I sleep a little warm. So I feel like this is kind of on the like a 15 or 10 would probably be more suited for most people based on how you sleep. And I was always sleeping in 250 weight merino top and bottom, and sometimes with my down puppy on. One thing I recently acquired is the stuffed sack pillow that these folks don't seem to like, but I love mine. I usually just put whatever gear, my dirty clothes, dirty pair of socks, or whatever I'm not wearing, I put in there. It's not great in the rain because then you're just putting wet stuff in a Dyneema bag, which grosses me out. But for when it's not pouring rain, it's nice. It has fleece on one side, which is nice. And if you don't like completely fill it, you can kind of nestle your head in there a little bit. Outerwear, I started with an Arc'teryx Alpha SL rain jacket. They don't make it anymore, but it was like a Gore-Tex Pro Anorak with a zip. I had a lot of trouble. I got it warranted eventually. I was getting soaked. I think where the zipper was, there wasn't enough flap behind it. So anytime it rained, I was getting a ton of water right through the zipper area. They were nice about the warranty, but it didn't help me on my hike during it. I eventually got a Mountain Hardwear Exposure 2. Again, I don't know if this jacket's made, but it's a Gore-Tex Pro rain jacket. You know, it weighs like a pound, but it's bomb-proof. And when it's sideways, windy, rainy, sleet, snow, it's like I feel like I'm in a little fortress, and I'd happily take the weight hit for having a really nice rain gear where I feel like I can be in it all day. And even if I get a little sweaty in it, you know, that's warm water, not cold water from outside. And for dislikes, outdoor research helium rain pants, complete waste of time. I found any time I walked through a leaf, the kind of car wash we were talking about, I was instantly feeling water get through. Like I could feel cold water coming into the pants. They did great. Like they were pretty breathable for rain pants. Good for protection from wind. Excellent for bugs because bugs aren't getting through them. But you know, I was absolutely soaked anytime there was more than, you know, maybe like a light mist to keep them off, mostly just with DWR. But I don't know how they're called rain pants, at least not my pair. For kind of everyday clothes, I had Patagonia baggies, which I wore like 90% of the time. And then I had Arc'teryx Palisade pants. I'm sure some ultralighters rolling over in their grave because I brought shorts and pants, but I really liked having both. Um, Shorts were great for almost every day, but then, you know, when it got brushy with kind of the willows that are knee high, just demolishing your shins, I was really happy to have pants. Also for bug protection, you can just go nuts on bug spray on the pants. I don't really like putting it on my skin if I have the option. And I had a Patagonia sun hoodie, which was great. We started out in the heat dome. It was 40 something degrees for the first bit. It was really nice just not having sun on me. I feel like no matter how much sunblock and water you drink, you still kind of get zonked by the sun if it's on your skin all day. So I appreciated having something to cover me up. Um, and then one thing I forgot to mention. So I know some folks are like fleece is having its moment right now between Senchi and all these other brands. For kind of wetter environments, looking back, I will probably go with a lighter down jacket. So I had a down jacket that was about the same as like the Patagonia down sweater, kind of like that classic light to mid-weight range. Um, I think like a Ghost Whisperer would be totally fine if you also had a fleece. My partner had a fleece, the Outdoor Research Vigor, which is it's a great quality fleece. It's pretty cheap. Outdoor Research stuff usually has pretty competitive pricing. Recently, I got a Mountain Hardwear Air Mesh, which is kind of their take on the, you know, all these super light fleeces that are coming out. It's really nice. I've hiked like a lot of training hikes in the past 2 months with it. I really enjoy it, and I feel like I would have really enjoyed that on the GDT for the weight penalty of 5 ounces or whatever. And then I could have brought maybe a little less thick of a down jacket just to have a little bit more warm clothes to wear if it's wet. For footwear, I had Ultra Lone Peaks. I went through two pairs. I swapped at Saskatchewan Crossing. That was definitely the end of the shoes there. As Tyler mentioned, to me, the quality of the shoes is complete trash. They fit my feet well. A lot of other people I know, they have switched away from Lone Peaks and gone to other shoes like the Salomon, I think XA Pro 3Ds. It's a great shoe for the Rockies. It's a little stiffer for like this kind of scree-y, you know, steeper, you know, not just perfect dirt trail. It's not, I appreciate having a little bit stiffer. I've since moved to a Topo Traverse, and I feel like that's an excellent GDT shoe. It's pretty stiff. You got nice rubber, deeper lugs. The quality is way better. I have currently about the same amount of kilometers I ever had on a pair of Lone Peaks. It's what I did the Wind River High Route in last year. And yeah, they still look way better than the Ultras even after 200K. For pack, I had a Hyperlight Mountain Gear Junction 3400. I wouldn't have changed anything. You know, one, I do feel like towards the end of the hike, I was losing a little bit of weight. So I was getting a little bit of like digging in where the frame hits the bottom. But I actually just pulled the frame stays out for like 3 days to give my back a rest. I had to pack my bag a little differently, but I really enjoyed having that pack. It's really nice too, I find, with the Dyneema or, you know, any of these kind of more waterproof fabric packs, is that in the morning when you're walking through wet brush or whatever, you really don't have to worry about your stuff getting wet. Like I've since dropped the bag in water, and then it's got enough leaks in it now where it's going to fill up, but it's resistant enough where in the rain it's not getting wet on the inside. I also lined it with a white garbage trash bag. I started with black and realized you can't see anything with a black bag, so got a white one and you can see a lot better. For poles, I used the Black Diamond Distance FLZs. I snapped 2 of them. I was probably being harder on them than I should have. My partner used the Black Diamond carbon corks. They're a beauty. They're like the Cadillac of poles, I think. She's bringing them this summer on our PCT hike, the original pair she bought in 2021. In cook systems, so we shared a stove. We had a Pocket Rocket 2. We used a 1200 milliliter pot, and I found that was perfect for, you can put about 900 mils in there because you don't want it to boil over. And I found, just under a liter was the perfect amount of water for what we needed. We made all our own dehydrated food. And I found, 450 mils per person was kind of the perfect size. And also kind of the mid-range fuel can was the perfect length for all the sections. There's I always forget the actual weight, but there's the baby one, the pretty standard one, and then the really tall one. The medium one I found was perfect for 2 people, boiling about a liter of water. For dinner, we just boiled for dinner, and then every once in a while, we would heat it up for lunch just to have a warm water to warm you up or something. Dislikes those helium rain pants. They are not rain pants. They're for wind and bugs, but I found they didn't work at all to protect me from water. And tips, as Tyler mentioned, the Pocket Bidet, game changer. I really love that thing. It just makes you feel so much cleaner. It's so much less toilet paper. I did get, a different water bottle because it doesn't thread on. It doesn't actually compared to a smart water bottle, because it goes on the inside rather than the outside, the threads are susceptible to fecal matter, possibly. And so I just found in a recycling bin just one of those, you go to the grocery store and you buy those 30-pack of water bottles. I just grabbed one of those water bottles, crunched it up, and threw it in the back of my backpack, and then just filled that up, and that was my bidet water bottle. One thing I learned from Charlene, who's in outreach and did a gear webinar in 2021 the year I hiked, she told me that instead of having camp shoes or dry socks or anything, she just buys gallon-sized Ziploc bags, like the big freezer size. She cuts off the Ziploc part, and then when she gets to camp, she just puts on her sleep socks, puts the Ziploc bags over her feet, and then puts them in her shoes. So even if your shoes are muddy and soaked, you still have that protection from the Ziploc bag. And that was so nice just to be able to loosen off the shoes and feel warm and dry without having to really pack another thing except for a couple Ziploc bags. And lastly, I used an Ursack. The smelly proof bags, evidence is, mixed. It's hard to say exactly how well they work, but it made me sleep better. And so that's why I liked it. It's also nice to keep my stuff dry. So with the Ursack, if it's pouring rain, it's going to get wet on the inside. It's nice just to kind of keep it contained. My tip for that is if you're going to bring some kind of smelly proof bag, don't do the Ziploc part every single time you open and close it. Only do it at night because that's the part that always breaks, is the actual Ziploc part. What else I was going to mention? Oh, I think that's it. Do people prefer Topos or Hoka Speed Goats? My Speed Goats are comfy with Superfeed insole, but the tread wears out so quick. Yeah, we were talking about shoes just before the call started, and I have Speed Goats for running. But yeah, we said the same thing. I find they wear out really fast, and the cushion doesn't have the same kind of life after just even a couple 100 kilometers. I prefer Topos for walking and Speed Goats for running. I also, I don't know if it's just a me thing, I find with really rocker shoes, like the Speed Goats, where they kind of want to put you forward, actually hurts my patellar tendon a little bit because I find I'm always kind of leaning forward. And even though they don't have a lot of drop, I just naturally get put forward versus the Topos are a lot more flat shoes. Same with the Ultras. So I feel like I'm a little bit more back with my weight, so it doesn't hurt my knees so much. Tarn, my feet sweat at almost any temp. If in vapor barriers, thoughts on ultralight waterproof socks for in camp and for days of wet snow or rain or foliage, someone will size 15 feet. Now, I've never tried waterproof socks, and I don't know anybody that has tried them. Has anybody here tried them? No?
I bought a pair of they're called Shower Pass, and they're actually a merino wool, and they are a waterproof because they have like what is it, a rubber membrane or something in them or whatever. They're great as long as you've got rain pants on, but the water's just going to go up over top and in anyway, so they're kind of useless. They'd be great for like walking in wet grass and keeping your feet dry. But as you know, like you don't want Gore-Tex shoes on the Great Divide either because they take so long to dry, right? So it's kind of the same thing. I didn't like them. I tried them and never used them again.
Yeah, to give context, I had wet feet almost at one point of every single day of the trail. And so I appreciated having thin socks. Like I did blow through a few pairs of socks. But to me, that was just a wear item. I was happy to just have socks that could dry really quick, and the shoes dried pretty quick too. Just popping the insoles out every time at lunch and wide open, just get all the humidity out of there as possible. Roger asked about Ursack sizes. How many days of food can the 15-liter Ursack carry? I'm assuming the 15 liters is the medium. They have this like regular one, the XL, and then the humongous one. My partner and I both had, I think it was the Ursack XL, which is the medium. And that was fine for every section except F and G, which we did in one push, which this was before the Blueberry Lake resupply and before you could resupply at Mount Robson. And then that one, we had the smallest Ursack at home. And so we just had that one just for F and G. We mailed it to Jasper. We only needed it for like a day. It was kind of annoying, but if you are going to buy one, yeah, like the Atatech 20-liter, I think would be great for like 9+. But I find 8 days is where the 15-liter is like really topped out for me. What sizes have you guys used?
Yeah, I find the 15-liter and that 7-8 day threshold is pretty close. I mean, it depends on what you eat. I mean, and because of course the size of the food can vary quite a bit and how many snacks you're bringing. But yeah, usually if I'm going for 8 days, it's like I've got 7 days in my Ursack, and then I eat the first day while I'm hiking out, so I don't actually need to put the first day in my Ursack, and that's kind of the trick that I find. But yeah, if you're going to be going for food carries longer than that, I probably would be I'd go for something a bit larger.
What were our base weights? So it depends if you count my phone as worn weight. But I think my base weight was like 14 and a half. I had like a small point and shoot camera, and my partner carried a GoPro, and then a 10,000 milliamp. I forgot to talk about power, but 10,000 milliamp battery. That was perfect. I charged my watch, my phone, and that was basically it. We charged a GoPro a couple times, but base weight was like 14 pounds. To give perspective, I'm hiking the PCT this year, and my base weight will be like 9 pounds. So, I mean, bear spray, boom, there's a pound right away. Rain jacket, boom, there's like another pound right away. So I think trying to it's like comparing apples to oranges on that. So significantly heavier than other trails.
Usually my base weight is right around 14 pounds as well. So
I think I might go a little heavier myself. I've leaned into more like 17, 18, but that's because again, I'm still I would call myself a lightweight pack person. I'm not full committed to the ultralight side of things. So
Yeah, I think it's important to think about the things that we need in the Rockies, which you don't need kind of everywhere, like bear spray alone. A battery charger for a little bit longer. Like instead of kind of hitting a town every 3 to 6 days, it's going to be like 8, 7 to 9 days. So batteries are really heavy. Rain jackets, longer food carries, Ursack or bear can. All these things are instant, like half pound to pound tack on things immediately that really add up.
I mean, and there's like little things like you could start saying like, oh, well, I've got like a bug net, and I've got the Thermacell, and so there's a bunch of things like, yeah, you could probably, cut your base weight a little bit longer, but I think just the quality of life improvements they give you on the trail, it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna, you know, shave off an extra pound and then just not enjoy the trail because I'm being devoured by bugs, or, I'm having to, um, you know, cold. I mean, no disrespect to Tyler, but I'm not going to be cold soaking my meals. I've tried that once or twice, and it did not work for me. I like my hot oatmeal in the morning, and hot freeze dried meal for dinner.
Hmm. Roger asked about transitioning from a bag to a quilt. Kelly, when did you transition to a quilt?
It's probably been about 5 years now. Um, and yeah, at first I was a little bit hesitant because like, oh, I'm always been used to having my sleeping bag all around you, but I found like for me, I got you can get the quilt that are just the pure square, or you can get the ones with the toe box. I like the ones with the toe box because that gives you at least a little bit of security around your feet to keep your feet warm if it's a cold night out. And then the other thing that I found worked really well, like I mentioned earlier, is you can get the little fitted sheet that goes on the sleeping pad, which makes a big difference just for comfort. And I mean, once you get used to the quilt, you can kind of, either you kind of put the straps on, or pull it nice and tight around you, and it'll keep you just as warm and draft free as a sleeping bag. I mean, I wouldn't take one into like the middle of winter when it's 20, 30 below, but for summer backpacking, it's been great. And then if it does get a little bit of colder, you can throw on your puffy or an extra layer, and it'll keep you nice and warm.
Hmm. Yeah, this trail was my first time with a quilt. Before that, I had a Marmot Helium 15, wonderful sleeping bag. And I have no qualms about switching to a quilt. I found I can move around way more because you don't kind of get all twisted and wrapped up. Assuming it fits you well, you fit on your pad well, and you know how to do it. Like kind of there was when I first started with it, it was 40 something degrees, so I was quite happy to just be able to like unzip it. Mine fully unzips flat, so you got to cinch up the toe box when it's cold. And so I was happy to have it for that versatility. Usually it's not that hot, but then when I found when it did get really cold, finding where to put the little straps around. I mean, it took a couple days to figure out. I'm right on the edge between the regular and the wide because I have pretty wide shoulders. I think if I was to buy it again, I would get one that's a few inches wider, just just to have that much more coverage to tuck it under me. But I felt like it was properly rated. Like, if it's rated for my partner's rated to 10 Fahrenheit. It's certainly warmer than my Marmot Helium 15 degree. Because if you're laying on your sleeping bag, it's not doing much. It's all about the loft around you. So it was an easy transition, I found, relatively speaking. And I've never decided I wanted a sleeping bag again, except for winter camping. When when like sleeping on snow, I find just the security of just saying, okay, I'm in my cocoon, but that's for like sleeping on snow in the middle of the winter.
I have to confess, I've carried a sleeping bag a couple of times again.
How come?
And it's just so darn comfortable. Like you just wrap it up, pull it up over, and I love it. That's one thing I miss about a sleeping bag is the hood. Just having that, and I'm not like I've got a lot of hair, so just having that hood too is really nice. So I've carried it a couple times, mostly like September, October, not July. And I have two um, Enlightened Equipment quilts. I've got a Revelation and I have an Enigma. And my Revelation is for like hot summer because you can just open it up like a blanket. And then the Enigma is like a closed toe box. And so I like them for different reasons.
I know with the sleeping bag I have in my sleep system, it's quite neat because the way that it's set up, because it's like fastens around the sleeping pad. So then
Zenvini,
it's
right?
actually a little thinner on where you'd like lay down. It was the
Mm.
Big Agnes.
Mm.
So it's a Big Agnes sleeping bag, and then the sleeping pad kind of fits. There's like a little mesh piece that kind of goes around it. So then you stay secure with your sleeping pad, and then you don't need that full sleeping bag effect. So it's kind of like a transitional item, we'll call it. If you're transitioning to a quilt, but you're not quite there yet, might be a nice option.
And my son used one of those in when he was in scouts, and he really enjoyed it, right? You kind of slip your sleeping pad into the pocket and it goes with you wherever you go. And it's not quite as heavy as a sleeping bag, and it's not quite as light as a quilt, but it's a good kind of hybrid.
Roger's asking about lower body warmth. Did we need leggings underneath pants or shorts? I know for myself, I was happy to have both because mornings could be cool. Usually evenings stay relatively warm if the weather's good, but mornings, no matter what the weather's like, can be pretty chilly. So I appreciated having just pants. I would say maybe 10 times I wore my like sleep base layers just to start in the morning. Definitely not if it was wet because I didn't want to get them wet, but for those like really clear, kind of chilly, higher alpiney mornings, I just wore my sleep base layers under to start for an hour or two.
One thing at least I find personally is like once you start hiking, your legs generally warm up pretty quick just because the muscles are continuously working. I mean you don't want to get them soaked or wet, but I find like just wearing a good pair of pants that like the ones that I wear generally had no issues with keeping warm. Um, Maybe an extra layer at night while because you're not moving around, but while you're hiking, they're working pretty hard.
Thoughts on rain ponchos in addition to more traditional gear for dealing with condensation and rain gear wetting out? I'd never considered them, but I've seen a lot of people talk about them on the GDT Facebook. It's interesting because I've never actually seen somebody hike with one on the GDT. One thing I will say as a little PSA for rain gear, as of about right now, kind of the DWRs on all manufacturers has changed. So all rain gear is going to be kind of set back multiple decades as far as DWR goes. Not how waterproof it is, but as far as wetting out, there's a lot of reports on brand new Arc'teryx jackets that are wetting out right away. So this might change the trajectory on rain gear coming up. But yeah, I don't know anybody that's used a poncho. I know a lot of the reasons people have not is with wind, it's not as effective, or if you're more chance to snag. But has anybody here used a poncho?
No, I haven't. I've seen also the rain skirts, but I've never used a poncho.
Yeah. I've used a rain skirt on shorter hikes. It was like it was fine. It was I did it on the Rockwall Trail and it was in September and we got some like windy sleet. I was happy I had it, but I way would have rather had pants. Like it was definitely that instance on saving weight but not being as comfortable. Opinions on two big folks and a 2P double wall without much extra room versus a 3P single wall with more room but not as good protection. That's a good question. I think it really depends on which tent.
Yeah.
Some tents are like I would really look at the width of the tents. Like a 50-inch wide tent is like a wide tent. That's like the XMID Pro 2 Plus, I think is 50, so you can fit two wide pads in there. Um, yeah, everybody I share a tent with is usually shorter.
You
Yeah,
know,
so this,
for the longest time too, Austin's like, and we all know is like a two-person tent really isn't a two-person tent. It's like a 1.5-person tent. And finally, like the manufacturers are starting to recognize that people are wanting a little more room, a little longer, and a lot of people too are using the regular wide versus the mummy sleeping pads too, right?
Mhm.
So really pay attention. I think for anybody, like really pay attention to the dimensions, the inside. Yeah. And also too, I find, because I am 6'4", I find Nemo tents are short,
Mm.
MSR tents are short. I can't sleep in either one of them, or like I wet out on the foot end always. So
And that's where that little taping out the perimeter trick I find works really well if you're trying to figure out should I get this size or that size. Like I
mhm.
said, just nothing quite beats actually seeing what it looks like lying down and going, yep, I can be diagonal, or it looks like I'm gonna bump my head, and you can kind of get a feel for like, okay, how high is it going to be above me if I'm lying here, and just kind of try it out before you buy.
Mhm.
Somebody had asked the question, Big Rock, Little Rock. And I never found a place where I needed to do Big Rock, Little Rock on the Great Divide.
Oh,
The
for
setup,
a steak?
yeah,
You mean either?
yeah. There's always the ground's always pretty good, so you don't have to use that. Um, you're not setting up tent on rock anywhere that I can think of, so you don't need to do Big Rock, Little Rock.
I'm trying to think if I've ever had to. I think most of the time I've been able to find a place where I've been able to stake it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Recommendations on which 15-degree sleeping bag packs down the smallest. My REI Magma is incredible. It takes up too much space. As far as I know, the only way you can like tell by online is just looking at what the fill weight is and what the fill power is, and then you can kind of get an idea on how big it's going to pack because it's mostly feathers. So I don't really know. I haven't looked at sleeping bags for um quite a few years.
Hey, to talk about filters, because we haven't really talked a
Oh
whole
yeah.
lot. We haven't really talked a whole lot about filters. There's the Katadyn Be Free, which is what I used for a little bit on the Great Divide, and I'll just say this with an asterisk. I uh, I I got really lucky. I didn't filter very much on the Great Divide. Like very seldom did I filter. I just drank straight, and so I'm not encouraging that anybody. That was just a decision I made, and I got lucky. There's others, the Quick Draw from Platypus, I find is really good too. Pair that with a Canuck bag, um, and that works really good. Obviously, the Sawyer squeezes work really good. But I guess it too totally depends on the time of year when you're going and the runoff and all of that as well, how much snow and stuff. But yeah, I didn't filter very much.
Yeah, I use the Be Free. The only I think down like I mean it filters great. It's fast. The only downside is I almost have to think of it as a consumable, and that
Hmm.
I only find I generally get a year, maybe a season and a half out of a Be Free. So it's not like some of the older filters where you buy one and it's good for years. Um, I do bring like a small Ziploc bag, so if I know it's going to be cold that night, I can just pop it in a Ziploc and put it in my quilt to keep it warm so it doesn't freeze. And then, someone asked like, do you bring like Aquamira drops or anything? I mean, I find worst case my backup is I can always boil water. I've got my stove. If I need to, I can boil some water um, uh, to just sterilize it if necessary. So I don't. For a while, I used to keep Aqua tabs. I used to carry just a bunch of extra as a backup, but after like 5 years of never using a single Aqua tab, I figured, I've got some alternatives. I'm always carrying my stove, so I can use that as a backup if I need to.
Kelly, I find too with the Bee Freeze and the other ones as well as in the Rockies, we have so much rock flour in the water from the glacial runoff that they get clogged so fast, which is why I just ended up not filtering at all because same as you, it is a consumable. I think they're $55 each roughly now too, and I didn't want to
Yeah.
be throwing one of those out. Like,
Yeah, I find like with the Be Free, like it's got the little, you're supposed to swish it afterwards to try to clear it. So I do that like religiously after I filter water. I'll swish it to make sure that I kind of clean some of the fibers. I used to have the Sawyer squeeze for a while. You can get the little kind of syringe to backwash it. I always carried that with me to backwash it because I had one trip was kind of late in the season. I went to went through Assiniboine, and I found like the first night that my B free was almost like totally clogged, and it was like you're basically sitting there squeezing the bag to get you know a few precious milliliters of water out. It eventually got better as I kept swishing it and cleaning it out throughout the trip. But yeah, so now basically every season I'll get a new one, and like I said, it's a lot faster than the old MSR pumps. You have to sit and pump
Yeah.
for like half an hour to get your liter or two of water, but kind of the convenience factor.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just seconding Kelly's point there about like the maintenance piece along trail, like take the time, make the effort to clean it as you go. I've used a variety of different systems along the way. I saw somebody in the chat, I believe, had iodine. I started with that, did Pristine, did Aquatabs, did the filters as well. I would also just second Kelly's point about keeping your filter with you overnight so it doesn't freeze, because if it cracks even with other different filtering systems, then you don't have that filter anymore and it's not reliable. So just make sure you look after your stuff properly as you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I started with a Sawyer, not the micro, it's the black one. I didn't, all my friends had squeezes, and it was they were getting some power out of that thing compared to my micro, so I bought a squeeze. And it was way better. Also, we did bring the tabs. I can't remember which brand, but one of the pop it in a liter. I really liked those for the evening, where it's just like you fill it up, especially somewhere rock flowery. Like if it was rock flowery, we either didn't filter or we just use a tab, which is a nice way to save the filter. And then it was just kind of like you fill it up, you toss the tab in there, set up your tent, change all that, and by that point it's ready. But yeah, also similar to Tyler, for a significant amount of time I did not filter, just because the water, it's like there's a glacier melting right there and I'm filling up. Again, not advised, but it's it's nice not having to hassle, and I don't know, the water appears to be of excellent quality.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we are fortunate on the GDTA the GDT that the water quality is generally quite good. Like you're not going to be, generally, dealing with, with cattle or other waste from that, but still always a risk of Giardia or crypto.
One thing I will say is there was a report about Window Mountain Lake that came out a few years ago, which is a lot of people's first or second night on Section B. And being there, it's a spectacular lake, but that lake actually does have very high levels of soft metals from industrial waste from a mine that's gone airborne nearby. So just because it looks great, it is not always great. I definitely drank out of that lake unfiltered, but looking back, especially through Section B, just know there is mining in the area, and sometimes these particles are going airborne. So even though it might look spectacular, it's not always spectacular. Roger asked about getting a hitch from the end of Walker Service to Jasper. I think it might take you a while because there's not a lot of traffic. I mean, depending on the day and time of day and what time of year, but I don't think that would be a problem. It might just take a couple hours to get it. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't have experience on that section, so I can't really comment. I got
Yeah, I
snubbed.
haven't been on Section G as either, so. I understand, like when you say end of the Walker Service Road, if you mean the Highway 16 end, then it's probably a lot better versus the end up near Kakwa is probably less so.
Yeah, it's a hitch on the road is slim pickings. There's not a lot, at least recently there hasn't been a lot of traffic. I've heard there's increased logging traffic going on that road now, but it's really remote, it's really rural, it's very long. Once you get to the highway 16 is a major highway. So I think you'll get one eventually, but when you pop out, you're not near a town or anything. So I think the hardest part would people be like, why is this person here? Is there still a helicopter service into Kakwa? There is if you want to pay for it. It's West Yellowhead Helicopters. A couple, I don't know if it was last year, in the past few years, some groups of people have tried to coordinate a heli ride. It's a few $1,000s, so it depends on what your budget's like and if you can fill it is the main thing. Usually they'll be using an A-Star, so that's 5 or 6 people to split it with. If anybody is interested in getting a helicopter, and they have all the people to do it. I tried to organize this a few years ago and it was a logistical nightmare, way too much telephone tag. But if you have a group of 5 or more people and you would like to contact the helicopter company, I'm happy to facilitate that conversation. We have good connection with them because we charter them for our trail building trips all the time. Float planes also an option, but I don't know who the contractor is for float planes. Also, for leaving Kakwa, there is Robson Valley Adventures, and they will pick you up as far as they can go up the Walker Forestry Road. And so I've heard now, so it's 25K from Kakwa Lake to the trailhead. And then from there, I think it's about another 20 to 30K that you have to walk on the logging road at the most. They said they'll drive up as far as they can. And right now they're like, okay, well, at kilometer or whatever, they said we can for sure go to here. Depending on the conditions, we'll go further. So that's also an option. And they can take you back to the highway. They can take you to Jasper. They can take you to Prince George, wherever you need to go. Roger asked, what's the hardest part of the GDT for each of you? Gear-wise, trail, cold, injury, etc.
I'd say
Hard
the
to say.
hardest, knock on wood, I've never been injured on the GDT, so I'll hopefully stays that way. I'd probably say the hardest part I've done so far is the first part of section E, up Owens Creek and kind of through there. Once you get up top and you're like into the over Owens Pass, it's absolutely spectacular. But it is a little bit of creek bashing to get up to that section, and then I'm going to be doing La Coulette this summer, so I've heard that is truly the hardest part. So I'll get back to you after that.
Hardest part for me was 6 passes alternate. I got super lucky in that I got a permit for it, and that was really rough, really buggy, really hot, up and down. It's pretty crazy and very overgrown. Did you do it, Austin? Did you do
It was definitely the hardest day and a half, 2 days
Yeah,
on the
it was
GDT, terrain-wise.
unbelievably hard, unbelievably beautiful. But gear wise, again, I think it's so important to do a couple of loadouts with all your gear, do some mock trips, couple days, test it all out. Because just because it looks cool on YouTube doesn't mean it's going to be great for you. I just can't, I can't stress that enough. Gear wise, shoes failed me. Shoes failed me time and time again. So, really pay attention to your shoes. Yeah, that's kind of about it. Trail, I never got hurt. Cold, never worried about it. I had it down puffy as well. And then if I did get cold, I'd just crawl into my tent, my sleeping bag, and that was the end of it. Yeah, I got really lucky. So I think our biggest life safety is obviously fire and an unwanted run-in with a furry animal.
Yeah.
Cow moose too. I mean, cow moose can be just as dangerous as grizzly bears. So, we always think about grizzly bears, but another thing to be mindful of is cow moose. I had a run-in with a cow moose on actually section B, and she decided to peel off, so that was a good thing. So
Yeah, for me, hardest, I feel like this was my first long trail, but I got pretty lucky with a lot of the gear. One area I think there was a pretty steep learning curve was how to deal with rain when it's raining for more than a day straight. When you wake up, it's raining, it rains all day, you go to bed, it's still raining, you wake up, it's still raining, and trying to figure out, okay, how can I keep my need be items dry? How can I stay warm and how to manage that? So, I'd never been hiking with, with consistent rain for over 24 hours before. And it was raining very hard. It wasn't just like a little sprinkle. It was definitely a storm. And I think that was the steepest learning curve. I think everything was managed well in the tent. It really sucks putting on wet socks, wet underwear, wet pants, wet shirt, and damp rain jacket. It sucks a lot. I think eventually you get moving. That got better. My hands got mild hypothermia, like I couldn't undo my waist belt. I had rain gloves on, but I think, that it was just raining so hard that it's either running in the top. So I think just really finding out how to manage that. I still don't think I've become proficient at it. So I think a loadout hike, in bad weather can teach you a lot about your weaknesses and kind of the stuff you've selected. But yeah, also, as Sean mentioned, the La Coulette day, it's really hard. It's one of the harder days I've had. 6 passes is also exceptionally hard. But it's a little bit slower pace because you have to look at every step versus La Coulette's just really steep,
Yeah.
relatively high for the Rockies. And you have water carry. I think I had 4 liters. It's the only time I had 4 liters on the whole trail. Otherwise, I was at like 2 or 2.5. And yeah, it was also during the heat wave, so that's why we left camp at 2:30 from Scarp. It was really nice, actually, like hiking in the dark up La Coulette was relatively straightforward for until about 4 when it started getting light, and then we could watch sunrise from up on the ridge. It was a pretty special day, but um, it's physically quite hard. I've heard Barnaby is also really hard if it's hot because you're just extending your lack of water for quite a while.
The one thing I might add is if you are heading Nobo and you're starting kind of like late June, early July, you may want to consider, at least for Section A, bringing micro spikes along. Depending on the snowpack and how fast things melt out, there are a few sections I know when I've been throughout Waterton where you get on some sections where it's like, it's a little bit sketchy. I wish I had contraction aids to get down some icy areas. So definitely something to consider if you're going early season.
Mhm. Yeah, I know the year we hiked, there was actually a lot of late season snow, but then it was super hot. So it melted pretty fast, but there was still a lot of spots we were on snow. And I think there were some spots where I was like, it was kind of the cusp, like going up Lynham Ridge, which is day 2 or 3, depending on your pace. We crossed some snow there. Fortunately, there were a lot of steps already, but you're on probably a 30-degree side hill on scree with snow on top. So if you did slip, it would have really not been a good situation. Cool. Anybody have any other questions? This is my last slide, so here we are at questions. But one thing I will say, I'm not sure if anybody or everybody saw it, but the kind of hiker registration list is up on the hikers page. It'll be on the website hopefully by the end of the weekend. It's really helpful for the GDTA to know when people are starting through hikes, what if you're just going out for a section hike, which section are you picking? It really helps us know where traffic is. It helps us when we go to meet with parks and other bodies to be like, okay, well, how many people are hiking your trail? Because it's very much just educated guesses. And so this is a really good way to know, okay, who was on it this year? If you aren't comfortable putting your name down for whatever reason, it's totally fine. Use a pseudonym. Just go John Doe. But just having some kind of information on who's hiking, where, and when. Can we register this with GDTA without posting it to a public list? So the list is it's just like a Google Docs form. If you don't want it to be public, I would just use a pseudonym. Or even if you don't want it to be public, if you just email me, could the hiker list get pinned to on the FB group? It should be in featured at the top. Let me double check. Sometimes, depending on what device you're on, sometimes the featured doesn't show up as featured as it should. So like on a phone, if you go to the Great Divide Trail hikers page, just at the top, there's a featured tab and then the hikers list is there. And you know what? I will post it. Just going to, just so folks see it. Hikers page. And yeah, like I said, you can use any name you want. You can put Spider-Man for all I care, but it's really helpful just for us to know who's on the trail and where they are. And we just look at it from a really top line level, like not like, oh, well, this person started this date. More just when is the herd of people going through? When it also helps for trail building. We want to make sure we're getting to areas maybe before the big kind of herd of folks are there. So yeah, bunch of reasons it's helpful for us.
One last thing, Austin, just for those that are new to the light/ultralight scene right now, and they may not be aware, Gear Trade in Okotoks is an amazing shop that carries 90% of what we were talking about tonight as well. And they're very, very informative and helpful. So yeah, check them out.
And they're very active with the GDTA, and they are out actually doing the thing.
Yeah.
Going out using the gear.
Yeah.
And you get a discount on most things. Tariffs
Yeah.
have made it a bit weird, but
Yeah.
they're pretty good at passing on the discount every single time they can for GDTA members.
Yeah. Just birds. Just the birds.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't use music. I used music 2 days on my whole hike. I think with the GDT, I wanted to be aware of bears, other people. Yeah, so only 2 days. Was having a rough go, so I need a little pick me up. But
well, the road walks, right? I think
yeah, exactly.
That's the only place I could see ever wanting to do it is just some of them road walks, but even still mindful of vehicles and all that stuff. So
and one thing I'm actually wearing them right now for the call is I use the over the ear headset, so it's bone conduction, so your ears are still clear, so that way you can still hear things around you. But yeah, I like to have podcasts and stuff while I'm hiking. But yeah, I wouldn't want to use earbuds that are actually plugging your ears, because you do want to be aware of what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that too, just be aware that if you are playing music, you're going to drain your battery on your phone way faster. I found I put it into like super power save mode where you can only use like 5 things. So I chose like I always get confused. Got hooks and far out, my camera, my other GPS, and the InReach app. And I found that really I could get like multiple days out of my phone if I turned it off at night.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, also the Ultralight Canada subreddit is a good place. It's a cesspool being Reddit. Yeah, there's some deals on there to be had. A lot of people buy things, doesn't work out for them, and then you get domestic shipping, which is nice.
Canada's Ultralight Facebook group. People buy and sell stuff on there as well. So it's a little bit slower. I think people are a little bit Facebooked out too, so sometimes the engagement's off. But there's also been a lot of buying and selling on Canada's Ultralight Facebook group too.
Yeah, I sold something on that page recently.
Yeah.
In the past year, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also a good spot to ask people about gear. The hikers page and the Canada Ultralight community is a good spot too, to see kind of what's worked for people and what hasn't.
Yep.
Alrighty, folks, that's it for us. Any last burning questions? Feel free to send them through. Tyler, Kelly, Deanne, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate all the different perspectives. I feel like we all have our things that have worked, so it goes to show there's not one answer for everybody. Kind of got to figure it out, and that's part of the fun.
One thing I would just add, for those of you who are looking for volunteer opportunities, we do have a number of our trail building trips up on the website. So if you're just interested in section hiking, you're not through hiking this summer, or you want to find some way to get on the trail and help out, just check out the website under events, and you can sign up for a couple of different trips that we've got going for building bridges, clearing trail, fixing campgrounds, lots of opportunities.
Also a good way to meet other like-minded folks that want to go hiking if you're solo and looking for a hiking buddy.
Totally. Thanks, guys.
Alrighty. Good night, everyone.
Right.